So call anyone who needs to be there, or just message your friends if they're interested in coming to this. Okay, so I'll start this session for now. Can you all see the presentation that I'm sharing? Maybe yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Fine. All right, so I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Amy Chariwala, third year, senior, and I am the DSC lead for this year. So we'll be coming up with a lot of events and webinars for you guys so that we can boost your development skills. Okay, so I'll be talking about the entire open source, and I have experience in it because I did outreach for the last 3 months at Apache, and I have been an open source developer since like the start of the second year itself. I have contributed not only to this Apache just for outreach's sake, but I started contributing to many other organizations. Okay, so first of all, I know that most of the people are interested in open source but get intimidated by it. Even I do. So this entire session will first go by. I'll tell you the perks of open source. Then after that, I will tell you what all tools are actually used for open source, and then how you actually go about it. After going about it, the going about it, I'll show you through hands-on itself. So uh, there's no much presentation information or such. I'll be showing you how to do it. Other than that, after that, I will be telling you about all the open source events that are actually happening across the globe, so you can stay aware about it. If you have more, that's cool. And after that, I'll be sharing you some links that I'll send on WhatsApp also later, and on Discord. Those are like the starting links from where you can start contributing in many different organizations. That depends on your liking. And then after that, we will end with FAQs. So if you guys have any questions regarding it, feel
Sorry,
free
there
to
is
ask.
noise in audio.
Huh? Can you hear? What happened? I'm audible, right?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay, cool.
Yes, ma'am.
So, all right. So I just told you all the list points of what we're gonna do. We will move on to the next slide. And also, if I'm going too fast for you guys, just tell me. I'll slow down. I don't mind. And if I'm going about something very repetitive and boring, tell me to skip that. I'll skip that. Okay. So next is why open source. Okay, so the first and biggest perk is you will get to connect with a lot of people, I'm telling you. Like for a specific organization, there are maintainers and contributors. So you get to collaborate with almost everyone. Okay, you might not be able to uh, like collaborate with and talk with every single person, but you'll get the main ones. So the thing is, for each and every organization on GitHub and every single repo on it, there is a maintainer who is like solely responsible and contributes the highest. Okay, so that getting like a connection with them is like the biggest perk. They help you throughout, and even if you ask them dumb questions according to you or silly or something, they wouldn't mind. They will help you throughout the process. Because even initially I have asked stupid questions, literally so stupid, because I didn't know how to go about it, but they told me how to, and it's cool. So, and plus, you don't have to be formal with them every single time. You don't have to keep calling them sir, ma'am. Like, you don't have to keep calling me ma'am. I'm Amy, just call me that. I'm fine with that. Also, another thing, even if you are skilled at some particular tech stack, for example, if you're skilled with front end development, you know a lot, you have worked with Angular, React, Bootstrap, you know almost every single aspect and all. But even then, there are some things you're missing out. So, when you contribute to a particular organization, you will 100% learn something new. It's going without any doubt. Even if you know React, you're going to learn more than that. Like recently, I didn't mind. I had to do, even though I'm full stack developer, I learned way too much in front end I didn't know about before. So you always end up learning new skills. Okay. And the last but not the least, I don't know if it happened, maybe you guys have not contributed yet, but when you do, and when your first PR will get merged, I swear to God, you'll feel really good about yourself. And especially on certain organizations, there are about 668 contributors. So at that point in the contributors list, they only show top 100. So if you manage to come under those top 100 contributors, you will feel so satisfied. Even honestly, competitive programming won't satisfy you that much as this satisfies you. So it's too good. And also sometimes when you don't have to necessarily contribute by creating PRs, you can also like submit issues on it. So when you submit issues and those issues are actually taken into consideration by the mentors and acknowledged, then also it feels really good. This gives you sort of satisfaction that, oh, you're going as the right path as a developer, I can move on further, I can grow now. So it's a self motivation. Open source helps you to connect, just like LinkedIn does, but this one is like way to direct connection you get. You can talk frankly with anyone, honestly, once you come to know with each other. You will learn a lot. A lot means a lot. And also, it's fun. You will enjoy no matter what project you do. It's not like going to an office and acting like some robot doing every single thing your boss is giving you to do. It's not going to be like that. even though it's not in most of the companies like that anymore, but majorly you will end up working like a robot for the particular company. It's not that fun. Okay, so next are the tools that are majorly used for open source. So everyone, we already conducted webinars on Git and GitHub. So I hope you guys have watched that so that you have like basic and advanced idea of what the Git commands are and GitHub is. Okay, so that like gives, once you know the commands of Git, it will give you a really good head start to the open source world as well. Okay, so see now there, other than GitHub, there's GitLab and Bitbucket also, but majorly people, organizations, right? Organization prefer using GitHub itself. So it is like one amazing platform for all the open source organization. So someday if you want to like, even if you don't directly work for Google, you can try learning so much that you want to, you can like make a liable commit to the Google organization. That gives you the best satisfaction, honestly. You can boast about it, there's no problem, and then it's more fun than boasting about the ranks on the coding platform. That's also fine, but this is just like really great impact you contributed to big organizations like Google and all. Another one is Gitter. Now, this is where actually you connect either on the IRC channels or on Gitter, because Gitter has most of the organization. Every single organization is present on Gitter, be it Webpack, be it Apache, be it FOSS Asia. Each and every most of them you will find it on Gitter. It's really easy when you are like stuck or something, and you can easily ask on the Gitter, and someone or the other of the maintainers will answer you, or some other person also. That doesn't matter because there can be time zone difference, so it might take some time delay, but it will happen. It's the best place to connect. Even from GitHub, like you can personally message some of the mentors for any queries, or if you want to work on some specific type of problems, they'll provide you guidance. There is no harm in that. But and initially, even though you call them sir or ma'am, but later on if you just call them by the name, it's fine. They find it pretty cool to be on the on that level of frankness. Okay, now till now is it all clear? It's just like the basic touch up of open source. Is it clear to all?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now I'll be showing you like how to go about open source, like what all are the steps you need when you want to contribute to the open source. So basically there is no more great presentation slides anymore. I'll be just talking and then showing you directly. Okay, so the first thing you always do is check what your skill set is. Because if you want to do your first contribution, better do it something that you are like partly skilled at least. You have the basic knowledge of it, you go to it. Okay, so first define your skill set and what you actually like working on. Okay, so in my case, I love web development. I love finding bugs on website and resolving them. In my case, I find it pretty easy to solve any kind of bugs in the responsiveness and the performance of the website. I can do that, so I contribute to most of it. Other than that, whatever interests you, like if you want to do something with Java, with Go, with Flutter, with Android app, go about it. There are always some of the other organizations that are dealing with this. So that's the thing. Now I'll just go directly and show you how it is. Okay, so first thing I'll show you on one of the organizations, like okay, slow. Okay, so let's say you have chosen an organization based on your skill set. So, for instance, right now, I'm not going to choose web development. I'll just go about, I want to try something new. I have the basic knowledge of. So, Let's say I've explored blockchain, I know how it works. I can write tests, I can do different things. So, and I have worked with Truffle, so I will try to contribute to the Truffle organization. So, within the Truffle organization, there are obviously many other repos. Each and every organization has repos. You just need to choose which repo you want to work for. So right now I just showed the trufflesuit.com. Okay, that's like the official website of Truffle. So it involves not only the website, but it also involves all the documentation for it. Okay, so first thing, you go to any website, you have this really large code base. It's not so large in this case, but if you go to a really huge organization like Webpack and Apache and all, their repos are huge. It's hard to get like the grasp of the structure of the repo. You don't have to completely always get the grasp of the structure in one go. You can get it as you go. Like as you contribute, you learn more. So that way you can learn. So first thing is, always when you do, you need to first learn to set up the entire thing of the particular repo. So always go through the readme. Okay, because if you can't do setup only, then there is no point. Because if you're having problem in setup, you can always ask on Gator. As I have already mentioned, it's a tool you can connect and ask your problems if you're facing any. But always first try asking on Stack Overflow and all. It's a better practice. It shows that you are independently trying to solve the problem. But if after an hour or two you're still stuck at it, just go on Gator and ask some of them. Okay, so after that, first like read the readme, follow the instruction. After you have got the entire setup done, then cool. Now is the next step. You have done the setup of the particular organization's project. Okay. Next thing is what you want to work on. Okay. So necessarily you don't understand the code base repo. So and you don't find any particular issue with it right now. So always there is a issue tab. Some of the other member have the issues. So when you go to issues, they always have labels within it. Okay, do you see those labels like priority high, enhancement in progress, and all? Okay, so in this also good first issue. These are the ones. If you find a good first issue on a repo, this is for you. Its good first issues are labeled in such a way that these issues are pretty comfortable for the newcomers of the who want to contribute to this repo. So it is meant for them. Okay, so let's say when you go to a particular issue, okay, so first thing you need to check that if somebody has already started working on it. Okay, so like you see this after the user has like said the issue and labeled it good for the issue, another user said can I work on this. Okay, that's how you always go about it. You always, if you go to the issue tab, check first for good first issue because it's always easier to solve them because they're just meant for the new contributors. After that, when you go on that, first check if somebody has already stated that they want to work on this issue and the maintainer has said. Okay, so if the person has if there has been no comment on it, you ask respectfully, can I work on this issue? All right, so that's how we proceed on it. After you have worked on this issue, like after you have commented that you want to work on this issue, try to first understand. Even if you have like a basic problem on understanding the particular issue, you can always comment and ask because the maintainers or the user itself will answer you back. So you will know, like, have a clarity on what you need to answer. Okay. Also, there will be cases where there will be no good first issue also, but that's not always the problem because let's say you go to a particular issue see if you can work with it. There are always labels on it. Like if there is like a bug labeled as bug, do that first. Don't go for a issue that has been labeled as a feature, because you don't want to develop a new feature if you don't have the right skill set for a new contributor. Always try to go on resolving the small bugs that are present in the issue list. Now this is all like contributing through code, so that's fine. That's what the developers like, and that's what you think is the only thing that's required for open source world. But that's not the case. Obviously, you can always contribute to the documentation as well. That is considered a valid contribution. Okay. Other than that, okay, so I'll first complete on the issues tab also, all the perk, all the possibilities that can happen. So first go for good first issue. If you think that's solvable by you, ask if you can solve it. Try working on it. If you can't, then just ask for any doubts. It will get clarified. Then with the clarity, you can solve it. If not, try to find any bug related issue. Do not try to find it initially on a feature if you're not that highly skilled. You will gain skill set while you practice, but don't do it initially. Okay. Now another thing, as I stated, other than code base, you can always do documentation also. That's completely fine. Now there are some cases, even if it's mentioned in good first issue and you told that I will be working on this particular issue, so and it took you a lot of time, because it has happened in my experience. I took a lot of time for a particular issue and it had already been resolved. So don't let that demotivate you, because that's fine. So after that has been done, like even if the thing you have been working on has already been resolved, check what that particular user had done for that issue you were trying to solve. If it seemed more optimized, cool. If it's possible that your solution was more optimized than the solution that was suggested for that issue, go ahead and make a pull request for that. It's all because each and every organization prefer a highly optimized solution for every single thing. So yeah, that's the case. Now, other than that, if you can't, if your solution is not that optimized, so don't get discouraged, because you can contribute in some way or the other. So what I generally practice and what my mentor also suggested while I was doing open source is that if you have been working on an issue and if someone already fixed that particular issue way faster than you, then it's completely fine. You can write a technical blog about it and tag that particular organization. There's always a chance that they will take that into consideration. And even when other users see it, it's kind of a motivation for them and for you as well. So gives you a particular clarity and do that way. Other than that, if you find a particular issue in the thing, in the repo, first like generate that issue, like create a particular issue stating that, okay, then some of the other maintainer will reply in a day or two. Just wait for a few days to see if there is any reply for the same, so that so that if that issue is acknowledged and it's actually a problem, you can start working on it. Okay, so that's how you majorly like go with the issue tag if you want to start. Now in pull request, so whenever you create pull requests, it needs to be in certain manner, because each and every particular organization has a contribution guideline. Please read that before you start contributing to it, because they would have a particular manner in which in which the PR has to be created. If it is not, your PR will fail and it will not be taken into regard unless and until you have made the changes according to the contribution guideline. Okay, so yeah, that creating PR has already been taught to you, and it's the basic part of the GitHub, so it's quite easy. It's just first you clone the repo, then you have the particular fork it first. fork it, clone it, then you have the local copy. After you have the local copy, do something to it, whatever issue you're trying to resolve, and then commit to it. Now also it depends on the commit message. Please don't make silly commit messages like you might always do, because some people just go like initial commit. That is not the way you write commits at all. There is a particular manner in which a commit is written. If it's a feature, you write feat colon and the particular feature that's there for the commit. The commit should explain in the shortest way what all your PR is trying to solve. Okay, so that's the basic thing. It's stuck. Okay, fine. So I'll just show you like one. Okay, wait. This till now did everyone understand this? I just need a yes or no for now.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Nice. Okay, one more thing. Do not call me ma'am. I'm fine with no ma'am. I don't really care about the ma'am and so thing. Okay, so this is about issues and pull requests, the basic manner you contribute. Now, when it comes to this is for code base. That's how you do with code base. Also, documentation. Also, you can make changes, but make sure that whenever you make changes to the documentation, it's similar to the manner the documentation was written previously. Do not change the manner in which it was written. Okay, so let's say in JavaScript there is a particular syntax like I want to write function name of and whatever logic you have written, but they don't prefer that kind of syntax. They want a different kind of syntax that followed in the documentation. You need to strictly follow that. Don't break that in a documentation for them. Okay. Also, apart from all this PR, your PR is not going to be merged in one go all the time. Do not expect that to happen at all. It will not be reviewed all of a sudden. For example, I like created a pull request in January on Truffle Suit, and huh? What happened? Okay. Okay, fine. I'll just continue. Okay, so it can take months before your particular PR is reviewed by someone. And even after it's reviewed, it will take like weeks to get it merged because the particular maintainer will have its own suggestions and you can't particularly argue with the maintainer in the way he wants the code to be. You can always give your point of view, but if they don't like it, they don't like it. That's all. You got to do it that way. It's fine because they are more experienced. They know what needs to be there, so they will guide you through it, the whole thing. And after all the problems are fixed and your PR is approved by the maintainers, then it will be merged definitely. There's no like nothing like it won't be merged. It will be merged. Just follow up on your PRs like that. Okay, now other than that, okay, so I'll talk about the particular repo that I work for a lot. Okay, so now there are cases in some of the organization that there is no issue tab. Okay, so in this case for Camel website, there was no issue tab or something, but that might freak you out. Like, where are you going to get the issues? But always, I told you the first step is going through the entire document, the README that they have provided. So in the README, they will completely tell that they go on a particular another site where they all lodge their issues. So in some of the Apache repos, they lodge their issues on a platform called Jira. So it's Jira issues. So in that place, you will be lodging all your issues. So either you can like create an issue or see if there is a particular issue that's already open. Because the status of the issue will always be there. It's the same case as in GitHub, but instead of GitHub, you're using some other platform for the same. Okay, so there will be if it's open, ask if you want to work on it, but also provide what you want to do in it. Like in my case, for this one, I had to like provide all the designs first before I started implementing, or any kind of automation for any code base I wanted to go through it. I had to like tell the maintainer what procedure I'm going to follow for this. If they like it, then please start implementing, because if they don't like it and you have implemented it, it's the waste of your time, honestly. It's not a good procedure. Wait, create the issue, tell them what you're going to do. If they approve it, then only start implementing it. It will be good in that way. So that's the case for most of the repos. So if you see in this one, it's huge. The code base is huge. It takes time for anyone to understand the entire structure for it, but it is cool because if you ever want to contribute to this repo, you can ask me, because I have got my high familiarity with 3 to 4 repos of the within the Apache org itself. So that's there with contributing to the Camel website. So or any other project. In this also, I didn't only implement like design, like I just didn't do front end and all. I did like many other things. I had to work with automation of many contents in it, because because uh, half of the projects that most of the org ones is everything is just automated. You don't want to do things manually. It's optimized, automated, and it's there just for you. Okay, so um, is the way they want, you have to do it that way. If your way is not optimized, they will keep making you make it optimized. But uh, and if you have the patience to work for it, then surely you will get to end of it. It's not a big problem with that. You can you guys came for this, so if you're interested in open source, have enough patience to work for a particular PR, then go for it. Okay, and also if you there are some cases where you don't know how to start with anything. You have no knowledge of the code base. You are just interested in the idea, but you have zero clue about what it is, what are the issues. I can't understand anything in this, and even if the maintainers are explaining, you aren't able to grasp it at all. So one thing tip you can do is I do that is like go to the pull request and check what they have done. Okay, uh, if you check what they have done, you will get a better knowledge, like okay, for this particular issue, this is where all the changes are made. So then you will get a slowly grasp on what it is, and then you can start working on your own. And also if you do some code reviews on, like if you find some particular bugs on the thing, so let's say for anything you click right now, I'm just clicking randomly. uh, so if you go through their changes that they have made, like you can always review the changes from here. So files changed from, okay, it's not okay, yeah. So cool. Whenever it's there, you can see what all changes have been made, what all deletion, what all addition. So if you feel that something is redundant, so you can always like go to this and add. So you can like add a comment or anything if you want to leave a particular suggestion, like you know what specific code line needs to be there. Just click insert code and write what code needs to be there actually, and after that just press start review. So after you review, just finish the review changes. That's how you give a code review to any particular pull request that's already there. Don't feel shy. Even if you're wrong, it's fine. But if you feel in yourself that okay, this manner is right for now to me, just review it. Even if you have like a problem, like can't understand what this particular line is there for, you can add a review on the section asking what does this line even do in a more formal manner. Don't ask the way I do. So that's the thing about contributing to open source. Okay, so is everyone clear on like the procedure on how you should go about? I need a yes or no.
Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, cool. Fine. Now, obviously, sometimes, most of the cases, you want to earn. Okay, like you want to earn something for what you have done. Okay, so it's always like that within a human mind. That's with everyone. You want to earn for what all hard work you have done. So obviously, there are many events in open source world that help you with it. So I will like make you go through each of them. So currently it's Outreachy is there. Its application are open currently, but till September 10 itself. So if okay, so in this case, boys are like there's a very less chance for the males getting through this because it's the goal of Outreachy is towards the ones that are discriminated more in the technology. Believe it or not, I haven't discriminated a lot of times. So yeah, even if you're good sometimes, and if you're discriminated at any point, your opinion has been neglected or your existence was avoided or something, you can apply for Outreachy, even though it does say that only transgender female African males it applies, but it is applicable to the people who have faced discrimination. I have seen the male participants as well in the past sentence, and they are not gay or something like that. They are straight, but they did face some discrimination on their path of technology, so they have applied for Outreachy, so they have got selected. I'll just tell you the manner in which both Outreachy and GSOC works, because I have an idea on both of them. Okay, but their way is completely different. I will tell you on how Outreachy does properly. Okay, so the first thing is this application period. So this application will ask you some basic questions. You just need to fill the checkbox, and then it has the basic essay questions like um, where do you feel discrimination? Have you ever felt? What are you going to contribute? What if you get outreachy? What do you expect from us? And all the basic questions you can write a lot on. Honestly, I've written a lot. If you want some tips, I will read yours also. I don't mind. I can review yours if someone is planning to apply on for it. I can review your essay questions and tell you. Other than that, if you after this application is submitted, they'll be like, okay, your application is legible, so it's submitted now. So after the application period, I think after a few weeks, they will tell you which all candidates are selected to even participate in the selection round. Now, this selection round doesn't mean you have been selected as an outreachy intern. This is the 1 month round. They will observe how you contribute to a particular project. Okay, so you have to make sure they will provide you the project list, obviously. So within that project list, you find whatever interests you. You can work on that project. And make contributions to it. Now, choosing the type of projects depends. Okay, so if you are going to choose a project that's hard and hardly people contribute to it, good for you. Try to contribute like 10 to 11, like 8 to 10 commits to get 8 to 10 PRs get merged at least for you. So that'll be great in your case if you have like contributed to a hard with less contributors. So your chance will be high. However, if you contribute to projects that have a lot of people apply trying for it, then you need to make sure you are ahead of everything. Because in my case, we had like for the same project, we had 30 people wanting the same post. We all wanted to get selected as an outreach intern, but I make sure to like stay like ahead so that uh, I have a higher chance of getting selected for outreach. Other than that, again, they have like in the selection round at the end, when you fill the final application, they will ask you the basic long questions again, why you have selected this project, what have you learned, what have you done during this during this period, and your basic timeline. Like if you are chosen as the outreach intern, that's the same case for GSOC as well. You need to create a particular set of timeline. So for this period, what are you going to work on and what all? For the 3 months, you need to properly provide the timeline for it and give it to them. Other than that, yeah, that's it for the application. Polish your resume because they will see. Now, apart from coding, you also need to be very active in communication because they will be seeing that also during the selection round. That is through Gitter. If you find your particular organization through Gitter or IRC, be active on that. Ask questions, help others. Anything that's possible. Stay in touch with your mentor if you want. That's pretty cool enough. So you need to make sure you are communicating enough because that's what is the main thing. Learning a lot and growing your connection with the open source. So those two are very important for you. Polishing your resume is up to you. It's best always to have a one-page resume. I have a one-page resume. So include what all important things, highlights for your resume, and give it to them. If you have contributed enough and you are satisfied with how it is, then you have a good chance of getting selected. So after the selection round, there are more few weeks because they take time to select. And after that, it depends if a project might want only one intern or two interns. In my case, there were two interns. So if you have worked hard enough, there's nothing as luck in this. You need to work hard in this. Okay? If you have worked hard for it, then definitely you're going to get selected for it. And it's going to be really happy moment. I'm telling you. I ended up dancing and I usually never dance. Then I came to know I got selected for outreach. So that's like the whole process. And after you got selected as outreach intern, then hallelujah. You just have to contribute the way I have told you to. And always stay in touch with your mentors. You will legit learn the whole process on how to like contribute properly with the mentors itself. They guide you at every single point. Now, when it comes to, and also plus point, you will get $2,000 stipend per month. So that's the perks of it. It gives the highest amount of payment, more than GSOC. But the thing is, outreach you can only apply for once. If you are like, I have interned now, I cannot ever intern again for outreach. Now comes GSOC. So everybody knows about GSOC for sure, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm hoping
Yes.
everyone knows. Yeah, everyone might have heard the name from somewhere or
Yeah.
the other. It has like a huge title to it, a very heavy weight for it. Okay, so getting into GSOC is hard. Okay, it is not going to be easy, but it's the same manner you do with outreach. Okay, so when it comes, you're going to have a 1 month timeline, 1 month period where you're going to contribute to any particular project that you like. This is the list for this year. It's not the list for next year. So the list is always updated as new can come. So whatever, like there's particular categories, you can select whatever category you are interested in. Based on that, you can select the project you want to work on. Okay, like for the organization you want to work on. When you, oh god, okay, it's stuck. I'm sorry about that. When you click on a particular organization, it states, I believe, all the projects it needs to do. Okay, so do you see all this technology that they use? So that's what the technology they majorly use. So I know Python, I know C++, I know JavaScript, I know PostgreSQL. That's how you do about it. I know most of it. I can learn Rust, but if it's not particular required for the project and it's completely okay. If the project is just in Python, then great enough. If not, then it's fine. Okay. So, okay, I am not. Okay, so here. Okay, so scan code. No, 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 no. Okay, so this are basically the, yeah, cool. Okay. So, see, this is the projects everyone has worked on. You will always work under a mentor, so that's like carefree. Mentors always help you out. So, based on the particular project or the idea list, you will be working on that itself. Now, the thing with difference between the GSOC and Outreachy is that in Outreachy, you don't really particular need to mention all the ideas you want to do, but it's best if you do. Obviously, it will give you a greater weight and higher chance. But in GSOC, it's mandatory. You need to elaborately create a proposal after the 1 month of they give you a 1 month, just like Outreachy. Within that, you need to contribute for the particular organization. After you have contributed, you also need to create a long proposal. If you want to ask, we have seniors who have participated in GSOC. I can give you the contacts after this. Okay, so when you create the particular proposal, as long as I've heard, in that you need to give a detailed explanation on what all features you want to include for the particular project. Because as much as your features will be unique and much more creditable for the particular project of the organization, they will take you in. I'm telling you, because as long as I know all of you are here, so all of you would be hardworking enough and would be committed to doing open source. So that is all fine. They know that you are hardworking, but you need to present your proposal in a proper way. It needs to go like what problem you are trying to, what problem is there, what problem are you trying to solve, and then like solution offered in a proper manner. And the after you propose the solution, you need to propose the timeline. It's the 3 months, so you need to propose each week what you are going to do by the end of the 1 month. What are you going to achieve? So and also be careful because for both of this, it's like only if they are impressed with your work, they will provide you the stipend. In the case of Outreachy, it's like a feedback. It's both case. Sorry, yeah. In GSOC and in Outreachy, at the end of 1 month, the mentors will provide the feedback for the interns. If the feedback is positive for you, then you have passed the first stage, and you will get the stipend for it. But if you haven't, if you have lagged and didn't complete your task, then you won't probably get it. So you need to be careful on that. If you are doing it for the love, it's cool, but obviously if you're going for GSOC and Outreachy, it's going to be competitive and you need to work your hardest under time crunch. So it's on you. Now the next one is not a competition, competitive thing. It's these two are paid. This one is not paid at all. But the best part is it gives you swags and t-shirt. So it's fun. You're getting tees and you're getting swag. So that's very cool. And the criteria is most of the time 4 to 5 pull requests that you need to create. So I'm hoping each of you know how to create pull requests. Um, so other than that, but you need to take care in Hacktoberfest is not to create silly pull requests because they can identify if there are some really silly pull requests, those will fail. You won't, those PRs won't be regarded. So you need to make reliable, proper pull requests. So what I am suggesting right now is if you want to actually start like practicing or if you want to contribute during that time, there is the DSC organization. I'll be sharing after this event. So on GitHub. So there is a repo for Reservoir. So over there you can like contribute all the list of resources that you want. Our website is also under construction, so if you find any bugs or issue, you are free to create issues and pull requests as well. Those are valid. Now, if you want to do it only during Hacktoberfest, cool for you, but that just means you are only looking for prizes and not doing it as for the sake of developer. But if you want to start from now and want to continue, it's cool because when it's Hacktoberfest, it's just 4 to 5 PRs. It's nothing great, honestly. Those PRs, it's not necessary for those PRs to get much. You just have to create a proper pull request, and if they are all valid, you're going to get a swag and a tee. And yeah, knowing about the design, which is way better than last time, I am sure that tee will be much better than this one last time that we had. Okay, other than that, there is MLH Fellowship. Okay, so MLH Fellowship, I haven't really participated in, but I've seen many others participate in. I've seen people posting it on LinkedIn as well. So as far as I have the knowledge of MLH Fellowship, it's like it provides you 3 months guidance under the mentor. It's not paid, of course. It's for you to learn. So if you are interested in learning, then you can always apply for fellowship. I'm not sure they pay you though, because you are going to be under the constant guidance of the mentors and the maintainers on how to go about everything. It's pretty good start for the head start for doing open source. So if you want to do getting an MLH fellowship is also a great title. All these particular titles are really big. Like if you go for any interview, not the ones that come to a campus. I don't really think they care much about development sometimes. If you go to apply off campus, like those big dev companies like Amazon and Amazon, GitHub, um, Google off campus though, or even on campus, we get Amazon on campus. So they care about your being a developer. So when you like mention if you pass the first coding round, if you mention in the interview that you have done outreach, you have done MLH fellowship, that gives you a really high weight over the others. The only reason being because you have the hands-on experience compared to others working under someone and working in a team as well. You know how to connect, you know how to solve problems, you have the experience, and you know what it means to provide a particular product within a time crunch. So that's what it means under those titles for it. So if you do this, it has its own benefits, but obviously don't expect it to get you like job or something. You need to do well in the interviews, then only get selected. But it's a great title. It feels good, honestly. I feel good telling people I was an outreach intern. So that's the thing with all the open source events. Okay, so this are based on Fedora and all the OpenShift and Kubernetes. So if you have interest in cloud computing or DevOps, if you will in future, I don't mind. I'll keep those on for that. These are like particular whole links my mentor had provided me with to start with your open source, because OpenShift, Kubernetes, and all are much heavier code base than the normal Apache and all. Apache Camel is heavy code base. It's hard to get grasp of, but Kubernetes is a higher title, much higher stage. Even some of the maintainers might not be knowing how to like perfectly good in this. So it's completely fine. There is Fedora though. Contributing on Fedora is surprisingly much better. So if you want to start with Fedora, it's pretty cool. Okay, so that's the link with how to contribute to Fedora. It majorly makes use of Python. Python is really easy to learn, way too easy to learn than compared to any other language. Give it a 4 to 5 days and you know the basic concepts of it. And then you can apply for the particular concepts that you have. So I'll share those particular calendar links and all for open source. Now in addition, the I would like to state is There are many for each and every organization. There are always some summits. Okay, so they are like open source events. So there is DockerCon, there's ApacheCon. So if you go to those particular events, you might just grasp the proper knowledge that you need. So it's really good. They are all virtual, but they are going to be there. You need to like stay updated with the events. If you have a particular interest in a topic, make sure that check if they have some upcoming events or summit or anything like that. So that's like a plus point. Someday, who knows that after contributing and all, you are one of the speakers in this con. So that's like from attending to speaking, being a speaker, that's like an upstage level. Open source can do that for you. Okay, so those are like real major perks, and it will also help you to attend events for open source because you have direct contact with the maintainers, so you can ask them what you want. It's interactive and it's pretty cool. I have attended a DockerCon for a few days, so it's really good. You get the basic knowledge with it. So beneficial for that. So these are the basic tips I have for now for how to get started with open source and all the events. So do you all have any doubts? Okay, wait, even if you have doubts, like could you raise like the use the raise the hand property so that it's easier to ask instead of creating a chaos? Uh, okay. Oh. Okay, so does anyone have any doubts over here?
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
You just told us that open source help us to come up and like if we have done a lot of work with open source and we get to speak on the stage and we get to present ourselves.
That depends.
So how?
Okay, see, all right. So,
Hmm.
okay, so see, I participated in Outreachy. I contributed a lot. Honestly, I went, even if I could just contribute like 50 commits and 30 to 50 commits and be happy with it, and I'll still get my payment because my tasks were done. But I went like overload with it. I made sure I like came like within the top 100 list for each of the repos I was working on. So now there is ApacheCon also. So within the ApacheCon, I am going to be a speaker as well for the Enlightenment talk. So this is like a great opportunity for me because I've never spoken on any call. So you will also get an opportunity like that if you stay in contact with your mentors and they are impressed by your work. So it has its perks. It's not always necessary to go on, but obviously, even if you are not selected as a speaker or something, you can always like write blogs of your journey as open source. People read, even your like non-maintainers or something, maintainers will read. So it's always a great thing to go do with open source. You get to connect with every single person and grow up your knowledge with it. Oh, is that okay? Who is there? Is Avanish? Okay. Does anyone have any other doubts? I can just Avanish. Fine.
Yes, ma'am. I had a query regarding that people from Northern Hemisphere are only allowed between this March to May to August internship.
Oh, that depends. No. That's like completely northern and completely southern hemisphere. We are in the center,
Okay, thank you.
so it's fine for us. So if you guys have any doubts, like even if you don't understand anything, you can ask right now. I don't really mind. Yes, yes. Okay, so I'm assuming.
Actually, before starting means starting contributing in the open source contribution, how much time we must allot to that particular organization? For example, from December or January for GSOC.
Oh, okay. See, that really depends. You don't have to necessarily always contribute from before. It gives you hands-on if you do. So let's say you want to work on Dart or something. That's the organization that made you get interested. So like start from this. It's fine if you start from December or February, but if you show in that particular selection period, if you start contributing way a lot, like with a high spike, and show that you are able to come up with a lot of features and solve bugs, the maintainers will see that. The vendors will take a record of every single thing that you're doing, the manner you're communicating, uh, the speed at which you are solving each and every problem and coming up with solution. So even if you did or did not contribute from before, it doesn't really matter, because for me, I didn't contribute from me before I started when the outreach started. Because the thing is, you don't necessarily know which organization might come, because sometimes it gets changed. It's not always the same. But obviously, you can go through the organization list for GSOC this year and see if it has come in the last 2 3 years. So it has been like in constant with GSOC. So then you can start contributing on it. So if it interests you, obviously I encourage you all to start contributing in open source. I have no problem. I started in second year itself for me. Okay, great. So okay, if anyone has, like, we will like take some few more if you have, otherwise we can end the session.
Ma'am, I had a doubt. Like mostly in well-known projects, they have issues that have mostly be commented on or already been taken up by someone. Then how can we find issues that like we are served first? Like, do we have to be stay updated with like any new issue that is coming up in a project or something as like that? Like
Okay.
mostly I see, yeah, mostly I see like the issues have already been commented on. So how can I find first come first serve issues?
Okay, fine. So I forgot to cover one issue. Thanks for reminding me. Okay, so even when the particular person has stated that I work on this issue, and this mentor said, yeah, fine, this issue goes to is assigned to that person. You can always comment and ask that can I collaborate with you on working for this issue, and it's it's best if you keep track of the issues, because for me, I used to keep a daily track on Jira on what issues come up. If some new issues come, I can easily solve. I do that fast before anyone else does. It's not a race, but if you can solve it before anyone else can, then why not? So, if possible, like, you can watch the particular organization, obviously, and for each repo there's the watch button on up. So uh, you can like keep track of it daily, go daily and check if there are issues. And obviously, if it's a big organization, I'm telling you, not each issue will be covered. Okay, also what you can do is, there is one more manner in which you can contribute. So let's say a particular issue has been submitted in a particular section, okay, and somebody has already started working on it. So what you can ask the maintainers, like, you can tag one of the maintainers and like comment asking is there any similarly related problems for the same? Is there the same kind of problems that I can work on? Because not all the time all issues would be covered by the maintainers. So If they see yours, they would look into if there are any more kind of similar thing. Then they would tell you, like they would make a thing, make a issue, then you can work on those. Because, and if you're looking for a really big organization, there are always going to be about 50 plus issues open for sure. At least 50 issues open for each. Like if you go for Google itself, way too big organization, there are 1K issues that are open in half of the repos. So obviously you can work on each or any of them, but if it's initial, then it's better you like start working on some bug. And all the time, as I told you, you don't have to like check in the issue tab if you found a problem on your own. Then let's say you create an issue, and if that issue is valid enough by the, if it's stated by the maintainer, then you say that you will be working on this issue, because always, because in the GitHub there is a possibility where you can assign also, so assign it to yourself, you're working on this particular issue, because you're the author of the particular issue, you can assign it to yourself and work on it, nobody else can. So there are multiple ways in which you can contribute, even though half of the issues are taken or something. And normally I have never worked on good for the issues. My strategy is to like get like 10% understanding on the repo. I got it, then I see some issues. I feel that I'm comfortable with this kind, I'll work on that. Or I'll find some feature or a bug in the particular repo, I'll work on that. That's how I always go about it. Okay, so is there any other related open source question? Okay, so I'm assuming not right now. Okay, I just wanted to ask you guys like an opinion or something. We at DFC are planning to conduct some night code sprints for you guys. I think we'll keep it open for anyone, but we will focus it mostly on you and the upcoming first years when they come. So this night code sprints will be like 5 to 6 hours coding at night. Okay, it's really fun. Staying up at night developing under time crunch is real fun. It's not going to be, this is not a hackathon or something. It's not going to be a competition. It's just going to be like you can work on the tech stack you love. You want to solve a problem, you can work on that. So we can do 5 to 6 hours of code sprints, and then maybe if you like some really good top 2 or something, then we could give certificates if it's a token, if you want a token of appreciation or like motivation with certificates and all, we don't mind doing that as well. But we are planning to conduct like night code sprints so that it helps you with development, and also it will help you in your future hackathons after COVID is over. So would you participate in such events? Bolo?
Hello. It will be a great idea. And can you tell me more about it, how it will be conducted? And I think that 5 to 6 hours is a little bit more, as we have some classworks also. And
oh, it's
that...
night. You finish it before that. See, uh, see, in hackathons, you never sleep. That's the thing. But this non hackathon, this you can like, we can start at 11 p.m. or something at really night and conduct it for 5 hours. You don't sleep. Obviously, we won't conduct it every single day. We will conduct like once per 2 weeks or something. So you can work on new tech stacks, new development or something. I am not. We didn't like fix on the specification, but we wanted to know if you guys will actually like participate in this ideas or not. Kind of small code sprints, yeah.
Yeah, if it is for once or twice a week, then it's okay. 5 to 6 hours, it's okay.
Yeah. So if everybody's fine with that, then I don't mind. Cause I remember conducting Mind Jam. I didn't really see much of the juniors in that. Quite disappointing. So I want to help you guys with this events. So who knows? You come up with really good solutions. It might be like worth working at for a long time also. It can just come in nips of time. You don't even know that you have a good idea. You start working on it. It's a brilliant idea. Others want to like work on it as well. So it'll be a good practice for you. Okay, wait. Who is the open for all, right? What do you mean open for all?
He means apart from the DSC members.
Yeah, obviously. It's for you guys as juniors. All of you can participate because restricting is boring. I don't mind helping the whole batch if I can help you guys because I know that you guys will be might I don't know most of it, but might be into competitive coding by next vacation or something because obviously on campus intern selection season or something will be there, so you would want to prepare for those. It depends what you want, but till then I want to help you guys with proper development and make like all I want is you guys get interest in development for the sake of interest and not for the sake that I need to have projects on my resume. That's not the kind of thing you are in DSC for. So yeah, we want you to develop more and more with us. So I'll be happy if you all participate in Night Code Sprints. I'll discuss it with all the core members and come up with all the rules for it. So in a week or something, we can like tell you guys on the detailing of it as well. But only if you guys will actually participate and think of it as boosting your development skills and not as like I need to win or something. It's not for that. It's just to boost your development skills, thinking skills, and everything else. So if it's fine, just type yes in the chat box. I don't really. Okay.